Today we have another example of a guy who totally abused the transfer portal. Not only that, but he also had one of the most ridiculous high school stories ever, as he played at 5 high schools in just 4 years. He's now on his 4th college football program. This guy has been at 9 schools since he entered high school. Today I'm going to introduce you to a quarterback by the name of Jake Garcia. He was at one point a top 15 recruit in the class of 2021, one of the highest ranked quarterbacks to ever sign at Miami. Unfortunately, he's fizzled out at 3 different schools now, and is on his last leg at Michigan, where he is just seen as a backup. In today's video, we're going to talk about Jake Garcia's 5-star journey, talk about the crazy movement he's had to 9 different schools, and then ultimately what went wrong for him. But before we get started, if you're a big fan of college football, be sure to subscribe to the channel, leave a like if you support today's video, and let me know what player, team, topic, or situation I can cover next. Now let's get started and talk about Jake Garcia. So in order to understand how he got to this point, we first need to go back in time. Jake Garcia was a Nebraska Cornhusker legacy type player, as his father Randy played quarterback for the Huskers back in the day and passed on his love of the game to his son, and he was naturally gifted. Originally from California, he would begin his high school career at the prestigious Long Beach Poly, where Nico Imaliava went, and his head coach left after his freshman season. This was his first roadblock, and it led him to leave as well. He decided to transfer to Narbonne High School, which is located in the Harbor City area of LA, and he'd play 1 year with the Gauchos. As a junior, Jake would throw for 2,301 yards and 25 touchdowns in just 9 games back in 2019. The Gauchos went 8-1 in those matchups, but before the regular season finale against Banning, the football team was banned from the playoffs and had to forfeit all 9 of their games due to fielding an ineligible player. Stuff was starting to get ridiculous. He then transferred to La Habra High School, which is located in Orange County, and then the 2020 stuff hit. He would now have to leave once again, and he'd now be on his 4th school in just 3 years. His 4th move was by far the most unique, as legitimately, I'm not making this up, his parents legally separated so that he could be deemed eligible to play in the Georgia High School Athletic Association. The quarterback then moved across the country with his dad and would enroll at Valdosta High School to play for one of the top programs in the state. Garcia would play in Valdosta's first game, and they would win 28-25 as he passed for 332 yards in that win. Unfortunately, just a little bit later, he was ruled ineligible by the Georgia High School Athletic Association as he violated transfer rules, and their win over Warner Robins became a forfeit. Eventually, he would transfer to Grayson High School, which was one of the top high school programs in the state, as his dad had sole custody of him, and that apparently satisfied the transfer rules. They won a state championship in his one lone season, and a lot of people knew about him because he also was in the Netflix series Titletown High, and that's why he was a big name. He ended up having 22 offers at the time from schools like Bama, Georgia, LSU, Oregon, and USC, and this guy was a blue chip recruit. Where would he end up going? Well, the San Jose State Spartans were the first team to offer him, so he listed them in their final group, but he chose another California school instead. He verbally committed to play for USC all the way back in September of 2019, and this would come right after they lost Bryce Young to Alabama in the 2020 class, but they gained a big pledge in Jake Garcia, who at the time was the number 14 overall prospect in the 24/7 Sports Composite, and USC had their next 5-star. He was seen as a tremendous pocket passer with a great arm, and he was going to be a perfect fit for Graham Harrell's offense. While he wasn't a runner by any means, he was mobile enough and athletic enough to get the job done, and many believed he was a lot like Keaton Slovis. He had great arm talent, and it looked like it took no effort for him to throw the football. He had been committed to the Trojans since the fall of 2019, but then something shifted. The USC staff decided to bring in another piece to the quarterback room, as they got 4-star quarterback from California, Miller Moss. He would commit to the Trojans, and that led Jake Garcia to making a decision. He said, quote, "After many discussions with my family and careful consideration, I am decommitting from USC. Doing so will allow me to honestly evaluate my options as the early signing date approaches, and no love has been lost for the USC family." According to Rivals, it appeared Miami would become the frontrunner for his services, and after Moss committed to USC, they also landed at a second quarterback in the 2021 class as they got Jackson Dart from Utah. Garcia had been the Hurricanes' top target at quarterback for a couple of years, and they would finally land him. He committed to Miami on the first day of the early signing period, signing his national letter of intent just 2 weeks after he decommitted from USC. He was also considering both Arkansas and Florida State down the stretch and had over 25 offers. He was the 3rd top 50 prospect in the Hurricanes' 2021 class, joining 5 stars in Leonard Taylor and James Williams, and he became the 2nd highest ranked quarterback to ever commit to Miami, behind Kyle Wright, who was the number 3 overall player, all the way back in the class of 2003. While he had not made many recent trips to Miami, he made a couple back in 2019, and he became the top priority for the staff, and he felt the love. 24/7 Sports analyst Greg Biggin would compare him to Ryan Tannehill, and he said that Jake was an impressive-looking prospect with a strong arm, was super athletic, had a good frame, and he's everything that you're looking for on paper in terms of upside and potential. In the last few games of his senior year, Garcia threw for 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns, and also had 5 interceptions. According to 24/7 Sports, Garcia was a 4-star recruit, the number 8 quarterback, and the 48th best player in the class of 2021, so he fell a little bit. How would he end up doing in college? Well, the whirlwind would continue. When he arrived at Miami in 2021, De'Aaron King and Tyler Van Dyke were already on the roster, and he was the most highly touted quarterback there in nearly 20 years. Obviously, the Canes had some depth back in 2021, so Garcia was very limited on the field. He played in their game against Central Connecticut as they won 69-0, and he went 11 of 14 for 147 yards and 2 total touchdowns. Garcia had the makings of a star in the future, but he was not getting any hype because Tyler Van Dyke was supposed to be the next big thing. After an incredible end of the 2021 season, Van Dyke had top 10 pick level of hype, but unfortunately, he would flame out rather quickly, and he'd make his first career start against Virginia on October 29th of 2022. This game was absolutely ridiculous, as he'd end up going 15 of 31 for 125 yards. He would end up winning the game though, as after multiple field goals in overtime, he would take a 2-point conversion in for the win, and they would win 14-12 in 4 OTs. This game was honestly one of the ugliest wins in Miami history, but I guess a win is a win. He said, quote, "There was a lot of praying going on for me on the sidelines during the 2-point conversion that was going on, and we called that play, and we had worked on it a couple of times, and I was ready for it. We talked it through, and I went and made a play." As I said, it was an extremely ugly win, and things never really quite got better for him. He would play in their game against Pitt at the end of the season, and he'd go 17 of 27 for 192 yards and 2 touchdowns, which honestly isn't awful, but they got blown out. As the season came to an end, Pete Thamel of ESPN reported that he would enter the 2023 transfer portal, and it wasn't all that shocking. The staff was being shaken up, as his quarterback's coach would leave after the season to go back to Appalachian State, and Mario Cristobal was underwhelmed by his performance at the quarterback spot. In total in 2022, he completed 68 of 114 passes for 803 yards and 5 touchdowns with 4 picks. It honestly just was not good enough, and he didn't show enough potential for Miami to really invest in him. They would decide to stick with Van Dyke, and now Jake Garcia would enter the transfer portal. He put the most tape on against Middle Tennessee, Duke, and Virginia, and the results were mixed. He had great arm talent, but there was a lot to clean up. He would enter that 2023 transfer portal and would eventually become a depth piece. He'd find his way to another Power 5 school as he would sign with the Missouri Tigers. The Tigers already had a couple of quarterbacks on the roster, including incumbent starter Brady Cook. This was before Brady Cook had become a big-time player, so some thought that he would have a chance. And Jake Garcia legitimately never saw the field for the Missouri Tigers. It's almost as if that year never happened, and just like clockwork, he would enter the transfer portal at the end of that season, and then would have to find another school. This time, there was not a Power 4 program willing to give him a chance, and he would decide to transfer over to East Carolina. Holton Ahlers had become a good quarterback for the Pirates, and they're hoping that Jake Garcia could be the next one up for him. Mike Houston would eventually name him the starting quarterback, as he would get the gig over Kattenhauser, a 4-star transfer from Michigan State. I guess he had shown enough on practice for the staff to put some faith in him, but this would end up biting the Pirates staff. Jake Garcia ended up having 4 touchdowns in their first game against Norfolk State, but he also had 3 interceptions. It got even worse the following week, as against Old Dominion, he'd throw for nearly 300 yards, but he had 0 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. In his first 2 games, he had a combined 7 turnovers, and honestly, it never really quite got better. He had an interception against Appalachian State, another one against Liberty, 2 against UTSA, and 1 against Charlotte. He did end up having a couple of good passing games though, as he had over 200 yards in 5 of his 6 starts, and he also scored a rushing touchdown in 2 of his 6 games as well. In total, he ended up finishing with 1,426 yards, 8 touchdowns, and 12 interceptions, with 2 more scores on the ground. Kattenhauser took over for the remainder of the season, and he's now their top quarterback going into 2025, so he would decide to enter the portal for a 3rd time, and he will now have to find his 4th school. After sitting in the portal for quite some time, he'd get a chance to play for another Power 4 team, this time with the Michigan Wolverines. He enters a quarterback room that had 5-star freshman Bryce Underwood, former 4-star 2024 kid Jaden Davis, and Fresno State transfer Mikey Keene. All three of those guys are projected to be ahead of him on the depth chart, but Garcia is just here as an insurance policy. And I mean, I don't really know if he'll ever be used. He'll likely be the 4th or 5th string quarterback in the room, and I honestly do not know why he is there. He will get an opportunity to play for a winning team, and maybe if some absolute craziness happens, he'll get on the field. Honestly, I think he just wants to go play for a winning team, and it was probably the best chance on paper. He probably wasn't going to start anywhere in college football, as he was pretty unstable and was a turnover machine. In his 4 years of college football, the best moment he had was a 2-point conversion against the worst team in the ACC, and this is absolutely nothing against Jake Garcia, as I was super hyped for him coming out of high school, and as a Mizzou fan, I thought he had a lot of potential, but he just wasn't it. I think part of it is his fault and part of it isn't, as he couldn't control what happened in 2020, and I also don't necessarily think he ever got a fair shake, but his problem was stability. Going to 5 different high schools and having all these crazy ordeals happen while you're just a 15 to 18-year-old definitely doesn't set you up for success, and all the movement in college didn't help either. It is definitely unfortunate to see him flame out, and I hope the best for him this year at Michigan, but we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Maybe he'll get on the field and surprise us all. But what do you guys think? If you're a fan of any of these schools that Jake played at, why do you think he never got on the field? Who's another player who's abused the portal, meaning they've played at 4 or more schools? And also, who should I cover next? Be sure to let me know down below, leave a like if you want to support today's video, subscribe if you're new, and check out one of the videos on the end screen. Hope to see you guys again soon, but until next time, peace.